A social media comment about Charlie Kirk led to, well, scrutiny, racism, and anger across the UK and, quite frankly, around the world. George Abaraonye, former president-elect of the Oxford Union, joins me for the memo to talk about the scrutiny, his future, and, well, the state of UK politics. I'm Kaylem Shepherd, and this is the memo. George, thank you very much for joining me on the memo. I appreciate it. It's been a long time coming. But no, thanks for coming on. I just want to talk about young George. You as a young boy growing up in West London.
Yeah.
Take me back.
Okay, well, so I grew up in and around like Fulham, Chelsea, West London, that kind of area.
Embargo? Did you go there?
Fuck no.
No embargo? What?
Hated embargo. No,
oh my gosh.
Because like you know what embargoes is when you get into it. Like embargoes is like that place like 15-year-olds are getting in with like fake IDs. Like, well, it's not me, isn't it? That was never me.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? And like I remember I went once after first time I went embargoes was actually when I went to uni. There was the boat party and the after parties at embargoes. Yeah. Oh my god, nightmarish situation. Yeah. Like I remember being in the smoking area. I was like 12, 30, you know, I asked my friend like, guys, can we please?
How did you get in so young?
No. First year.
Oh, okay. I thought you said 12 or 13.
Oh no.
I was like, what? That's incredibly
that's
young.
Crazy. No, that's crazy.
Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me though. It's embargo. Like,
It's the horror place.
So take me back.
Yeah. So obviously grew up in and around West London. I don't know. I guess I grew up playing a lot of football, just a bunch of different sports. I guess if we're gonna take it towards like, I guess schooling days and stuff like that. Like, I don't know. I had a very interesting relationship, I think, with my school, with teachers in my school. I used to get into a lot of trouble, but not necessarily because like, I was just out here doing madness, but more so just like, I think just grated with school systems, the school rules, like a lot of stuff around like hair policies, uniform policies, all of the kind of very nitpicky stuff that I think, like I then went on to study sociology and later understood as kind of like theories around socialization and why kind of school is a mirror for the workplace and how that kind of, process takes place in teaching kids how to become workers almost. And I found
essentially not wanting you to stand out, really.
Exactly. And I think from a young age, I kind of always grated against that for various different reasons. Be it like kind of some behavioral stuff I had when I was younger that like, kind of worked out of. But also just like, I guess personality stuff. I was never amazing at handling authority.
Yeah.
And I feel like that experience in school is what kind of got me curious about why. Like, is partly why I studied sociology, because I was just curious as to kind of why things are the way they are, why I'm interacting with people in the way I am in school, outside of school, why things are happening outside of school. Like, my parents were so keen on like me and my siblings like having, what's it called? Like, we used to watch the news all the time. Al Jazeera kids, like, hands down.
I was more of a CNN boy, personally.
Really?
No.
That's shocking. CNN in the UK as well?
Yes.
Questions need to be asked. But no, so we were Al Jazeera kids, and so we were always kind of watching, and I think from a very like globalized point of view as well, like what was going on around the world, and kind of like not just that British perspective on politics, but that global perspective on British politics. And I think it helped remove us from that very kind of like westernized canon of the world and the way the world works and the way, you go through school and the way you then go into work. And I think, again, it's kind of characterized a lot of my curiosity just around everything going on around me, which is why I study sociology. I didn't even study politics, actually. I considered it at A-level, and then I was like, actually, no, this looks kind of dead. And I looked at sociology and I thought this is way more interesting because this is about like actual human-to-human interaction. It's about how humans and people interact with like our social systems. And I thought that was way more interesting from a political perspective, and I thought way more like telling as to how to, like, say, improve people's lives or just improve, even like the lives of like the community and people around me. And so kind of, studied sociology at A-level alongside economics and maths and all these different things, thinking kind of I wanted to go into that economics route, but more so with a people lens focus. And then as I continued studying sociology and economics, I realized, well, economics is a bit of a nothing subject.
So that curiosity led you to Oxford?
Yes, to some degree.
Was that the plan at A-levels to study at Oxford? I know you wanted to go to Warwick.
I actually wanted to go to Warwick. So it wasn't really the plan necessarily. I originally didn't want to go to Oxford. I actually had talked to a lot of people about it. I was
But you must have applied earlier for Oxford, right?
yeah. So in
So
year
it
12,
was in the mind. It was in the mind.
it was on the mind.
Yeah.
But so obviously when you want to apply Oxford, when you want to do all these kind of things, they tell you from year 11, year 12, even you gotta be on your grind. You gotta be getting ready. You gotta be doing this. You gotta be doing
activities.
that. Do you know what I mean? I was not doing that. Well, I was doing extracurriculars, but again, not so because I wanted to go to Oxford as much as because I enjoyed the rigor. I enjoyed the challenge. And I remember coming.
You weren't one of those kids, from 5 doing horse riding,
no.
leading up to Oxford, this big application.
No. I actually never that, because my cousins went to Warwick, so I grew up hearing about Warwick. I grew up hearing about the rugby societies there and ACS there and all these different things, and I was like, guys,
Warwick must be a great university. My friend Ariana went there.
Well, I've heard it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Bit of a fall off now.
Yeah.
Can I say that? Hey, shout out Warwick, people, don't kill me, please.
They didn't accept you though, did they?
They did accept me, so actually bomb Warwick, dead
Oxford.
better
Oxford.
Defo. So I ended up kind of applying almost not on a whim, but kind of I got told by my parents and teachers, I know you should apply there. People who have your kind of talent or brains or whatever, should be applying to these places. And I was very apprehensive because I thought Oxford just wasn't really a place for me. I didn't think it was a place I'd enjoy. I didn't think it was somewhere that.
Why is that?
Well, I think obviously there's a kind of stereotypical Oxford student, and it doesn't look like me. It doesn't come from my background. It's not state school. It's not free school meals. It's typically privately educated. It's typically quite white. It's typically just not the kind of student I thought I was, and it wasn't the environment I thought I would succeed in. Not necessarily because I didn't think I had the academic chops for it, just as much as I thought I wanted to be in an environment around people that look like me, people that come from a similar background to me to some degree, people that can share in my perspective and understand where it is I'm coming from. Now that being said, I'm really glad actually that I did end up going. I was convinced that it is the right thing to do, or aspirational thing to do, to push myself out of that comfort zone. I'm glad I did, because I feel like I've grown a lot from that perspective. And I also want to kind of break down that narrative of Oxford being a very white institution, because, well, don't get me wrong, it's a very white institution, but there is also absolutely space for working class people. There's absolutely space for kids of color. And there are communities there that are kind of very self-sufficient and built up by the kind of positivity of those people who go through that challenge. So definitely in going, I realized actually not only is there space for us, but also that you need people that are willing to put themselves into uncomfortable places to create space for others. And I'm kind of glad I kind of went through that journey.
And it led you to be president-elect of the Oxford Union.
Yeah.
Tell us about that process.
It's an interesting journey. Actually, funnily, recently I went to watch this play. It's called The Prince. It was written by a friend of mine, I guess, called Kofa. He used to go to Oxford. And it was about, this kid who goes through the union and kind of how it can distort your moral judgment. I thought it was incredible play, fantastic. But I thought, incredibly poignant post my union experience, because I think it very much encapsulated some of the, I guess, rougher edges around the union, or some of the more broader concerns around how institutions and structures can kind of, erode a person for the sake of some kind of victory or win. Which is not to say what happened with me, but more so to say I think the union is a very interesting place, but there's a duality to it. I joined it mostly again out of that curiosity. I didn't have debate spaces a lot growing up in school, but I always loved having a debate. I loved having a discussion. Sociology was kind of built on that. My sociology class was kind of built on that foundation of everyone's getting involved, everyone's talking, ideas are flying around, and that kind of helps you with your learning. And so I kind of wanted to just join the union to kind of engage with some of those conversations. And I got pulled in by a friend of mine who wanted to run to be president at some point. And she was the only reason I joined. I said, no, I had no interest. I had no interest. But she kind of convinced me that actually, no, this is, again, the kind of space where sure, it's not built for people who look like you, who come from your background. It's not built for people like her. Who look like her and are built from her background. But it's about creating space. It's about creating space for those type of people. It's about creating space for those conversations. And I think the union is amazing at that. The union is amazing for that. And so kind of as I got more involved, just from that kind of side of wanting to have interesting conversations, wanting to have interesting debates, wanting to back people and candidates and friends that I thought, were doing the right thing for the right reasons.
Would you say it's also a chance to learn from your mistakes?
Absolutely. Because again, like the union has that duality to it. So for as much as it's like this idealistic place of, conversation and debate and all of this, it is also that testing ground for British politics.
I mean, how many of our,
there you
former
go.
prime ministers have
There you go. And so
been in that same room as you?
It's constantly about, making mistakes, be it in the political sphere, whatever the hell that means, and learning from that, but also in the debating sphere, because the whole point of it is trial by debate.
Yeah.
It's about learning through those conversations. It's not about winning every conversation as much as it's about being able to learn and take away something from every conversation. And I think the union has done a lot for me in terms of, to some degree, helping me open myself up to that debate and debating style, which I hadn't done before, and being able to learn from the mistakes that I've made throughout my time in the union.
You debated one of the most arguably divisive men in the world, no longer with us, Charlie Kirk. When you were debating him, what did you sense from him? Did you believe he believed in what he was saying, or was all theatre?
So it's interesting because I knew who Charlie Kirk was before he came to the union.
I must admit, I didn't.
Really?
I really didn't. I didn't.
Well,
maybe my TikTok page was different.
Yeah, it shows how online I am. I feel like, because I was very much like I kind of knew who he was because I've been on, like I said, I'm quite chronically online, and I remember I remember first getting into like debate style content around like I want to say like 13, 14, like the guy that was like the Prove Me Wrong guy.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
But the Prove Me Wrong guy, I used to watch a bunch of his stuff because I was just really like interested in like the conversations. I can now like look back and be like, it's a lot of culture war, like rage bait stuff.
Yeah, gets views.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But at the time, I think it was really interesting to engage like 13, 14-year-old me in that kind of like, again, open discussion. So I knew who he was. Which was why I was very apprehensive about debating him. I was very much like, I don't see how productive it can be, like, the whole we don't debate fascists kind of idea, like canon. I don't think it's productive to have a conversation with him.
Yeah.
And then, so he comes to the union, and I must say he's very respectful. Like, I do have to give him that. Very respectful, very kind to everybody, in a very, like, almost very British kind of way, like you have this kind of idea of American Republicans very brash, very outspoken, very rah-rah and up themselves. And I will say like he was quite calm. But I think it kind of then contrasts even further against his rhetoric.
Yeah.
Because then he went into a meet and greet and started talking about this great Western canon and this great Western narrative and how it's been lost in the modern age. And I'm thinking, well, that's imperialism, like that's colonialism. Like this great Western narrative is like the genocide of Native Americans. It's regional instability across the Middle East. It's this colonial narrative, this imperial narrative that America has built up for itself across like 2 centuries. And so immediately I'm apprehensive. I'm apprehensive about
like, where's that noise coming from?
My bad.
Is it my phone? No.
Immediately I'm apprehensive about what he's saying, his rhetoric, his demeanor, because I'm going like it's a stark contrast from this kind of kindness and calmness to then very harmful rhetoric. And so we then go into the chamber and he's talking about various different issues. At one point he talked about at the time there was this really big story about this woman in, I want to say Atlanta, who was pregnant and then had gone into a coma. And they had basically kept her alive, even though she was functionally dead. They'd kept her alive for the sake of having the baby be born. And, there was a lot of debate around the ethics of this, whether it was right, whether it was wrong. And the callousness with which he talked about that issue and abortion generally just made me think, wow, this is like actually...
I mean, he said something about if a 4-year-old was to be raped, she should
Exactly.
keep the child.
Exactly. Like some really like sinister stuff, some really questionable stuff around like crime rates in black communities, which is very
Not
like
trusting black pilots.
exactly. A lot of kind of things that I went like, no, I can't like I can't
Morally,
just sit here.
yeah.
Yeah, like it just irks like my soul to sit here and listen to this kind of just be spouted with very
and people
little
believe
pushback.
it as well. That's the
And
scary thing about it.
And this is the problem, like because again, it's that calmness and kindness almost that he comes into a conversation with, and this kind of almost reasonable approach of grounding his ideas in Christianity, kind of drawing people in with very what seem as reasonable takes at first, with an appeal to authority in God, and then hooking them in with something that is incredibly racist or incredibly like demeaning of someone or incredibly transphobic or whatever it is, and then kind of justifying it by going no, but it's not about everyone, it's about this specific group which I have a gripe with. And so I remember then going up to debate him, and I thought, well, I've seen him debate at Cambridge, and I saw him get dismantled, but I also knew I'm not like a debater, like I've not done debate practice my whole life, like I just have ideas and I can have conversations. So I thought, okay, like how am I going to engage someone like Charlie Kirk in a conversation? Well, I want to kind of understand where he's coming from first, because then you can point out the inconsistency, you can point out the flaws in his logic. So that's kind of how I wanted to go about it. I kind of opened up by just asking him about masculinity, because I'd done a lot of research on the manosphere at that time. I was about to host like a panel event. And so I asked him about the manosphere, because he very famously talks about this like Peter Pan generation of lost boys, and how like this loss of masculinity has led to kind of like a lot of different like societal downfall essentially. And I remember talking to him about this and wanting him to kind of build up his idea of what masculinity is, and this idealized version of masculinity, to then kind of
and as you say,
break it down.
It's an idea.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's not built in anything objective. No. It's not built in anything grounded. It's simply an idea of his view of masculinity, which he's entitled to. Yeah. But he then needs to reckon with, the consequences of, which I kind of wanted to have that conversation around, like, okay, you can have this idea of masculinity, you can have this idea of men should be men, and they can only be happy in a nuclear household, and they can only be happy doing, physical labor and all that kind of things, and being the breadwinner. But what about all of these people who live very different lives and are very happy? What about all of these people who live this life, who that you say is very kind of upheld and idealized version of masculinity, who are deeply upset? We see suicide rates are higher amongst men, suicide rates are higher amongst middle-aged men, amongst white men, amongst all of these different things. Why is that? That can't just be because of this like loss of masculinity, because they're performing masculinity as it should be, and it's not working for them. They're seeing all these different reasons.
Maybe that's the problem, masculinity.
Maybe that's the problem. Or maybe even there are other problems outside, that it's not just this one thing, and that we can't just isolate this issue to one issue, or we can't just isolate this topic to one issue being masculinity. Maybe it's about the economy. Maybe it's about the cost of living crisis. Maybe it's about, a lack of social infrastructure that helps support all of these people. All these kind of points that I felt like were missing from his analysis, but not missing because he's forgotten it, but missing because it doesn't...
Not part of the narrative.
Exactly. It's not part of his coherent narrative, well, incoherent narrative, as I would call it.
Yeah.
And so, it was a strangely fun exercise in being able to kind of challenge myself to have that conversation with someone who I very much disagree with. Because typically, again, like, I don't debate fascists. Like, I wouldn't engage with someone like that in a conversation because it's unproductive. But I think, it's like sometimes useful to be able to kind of test yourself like that. And B, I actually think with someone like Charlie Kirk, someone of his stature, someone of prominence, you actually need to have those debates and conversations, because he's not just a force in the vacuum. He is someone that should be talked to and should be conversed with to prove that actually these ideas are wrong and ludicrous and kind of silly to some capacity.
We have to talk about the criticism you faced.
Of course.
Do you want to tell the audience what you said rather than...
Yeah. In the kind of moments after he was shot, saw a notification online on Twitter, and I kind of went on my story and I posted Charlie Kirk got shot, lol, amongst a couple other comments around a similar tone, essentially, to some degree, I won't say celebrating, but, overly enthused, is that the right word? I don't know. Or making light of the situation regarding his shooting, which at the time, I didn't really know anything more than that. All I know is he'd been shot. I hadn't seen any videos. There was no kind of news around whether or not he had died or anything like that. And yeah, I mean, again, not a reaction I could say was very well considered at the time. But we all make mistakes, and something that I've learned and moved on from.
What did you learn from that mistake?
Well, I think firstly, just take a touch. I think take a touch, realizing that my voice isn't needed to be lent to everything. That sometimes you can take a moment back, or take a step back from a moment. Sorry, and consider. And whenever I have conversations with my friends, I kind of talk about it in three ways. So I look at it from the perspective that, I'm a black man. I look at it from the perspective that I'm the president-elect of the Oxford Union. And I look at it from the perspective that I am was president-elect of the Oxford Union, and that I am someone who's debated Charlie Kirk, met him in person, which not many people, in fact...
Makes it all the more personal.
Exactly. Not many people, I think, have been through that. Well, I don't think anyone actually has that kind of triangle of experiences. And so I found myself in what was a unique position where I think I, of all people, should have had the foresight to go, this is not something that I should be reacting to so quickly. This is something that I should take a step back from to consider the ramifications of my words.
I mean, a lot of people had a lot to say about you. I'm just going to point out Rod Lilly of the Spectator wrote, basically he referred to you, and I quote, as a semi-literate, dreadlock lefty with poor grades.
Yeah.
I mean, I read that and I was disgusted by those comments.
Yeah.
Racist, I think.
Yeah.
You didn't have poor grades.
Yeah.
So people just jumped on the bandwagon.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, how did you take all of that criticism? I mean, you're younger than I am. I couldn't imagine going through all of that.
It was it was a lot at the time, very paralyzing. I think at the in the moment, I just didn't really know what to do with it exactly. I was very much like, because, I could recognize that I'd made a mistake, but also I'd never been criticized on a national scale, and you don't expect to be criticized on a national scale.
Haters around the world.
Yeah, exactly. Like
calling for your name.
A friend of mine, said they were at a bar in Portugal or a pub in Portugal, and they walked in and saw my face on TV, which is insane. Like something I'd never thought would happen to me. And so it was very difficult in the moment because there are a lot of conflicting kind of emotions around not only firstly, why did I react like this? If there has to be some explanation for why I reacted like this, because I don't think of myself as some kind of violent radical who wants to see kind of people be shot in broad daylight. So why have I reacted in the way that I did? There has to be some kind of explanation. On the other hand, am I wrong for reacting like this? There are some people defending the position that, we shouldn't have empathy for Charlie Kirk. And in fact, there are many people advocating for, not policing the reaction, especially to the death of what was a white supremacist.
And there's a lot of those people that claim free speech.
Yeah.
Were gunning for your head.
Exactly.
Let's kick him out of Oxford.
In quite a, what I think, hypocritical kind of way. And so I was kind of very much trying to balance this, play this balancing game of do I apologize? If so, how and why? Why am I apologizing? Not just for the sake of, quelling backlash, but because I actually believe that I needed to apologize versus standing on the reaction because there is to some degree, I think, validity in not saying that people should be celebrating, but there is some validity in people not being upset over the death of a white supremacist.
We're running out of time. I'm so sorry. Just talk about the future. What's going on next? You got any plans? I know you're taking a gap year.
So currently on a year out. I guess for the future, I don't know. We'll see what things go. We'll see how things go. I'm kind of planning on just finishing my studies. Finishing my studies, broadening my political perspective, kind of very curious in getting involved in some direct action, direct work, either with organizations or parties, not really sure yet. And I guess to some degree as well, I guess my own passion project ideas around kind of building out this canon of the Black British identity and what that kind of looks like as a political movement. So many different things.
Well, George, thank you very much for joining
No,
us
of
on
course,
Memo.
of course.
Hopefully we can have you back to talk more about what you're doing.
Definitely.
Thank you very much for coming on
No, of
Memo.
course.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Hey everybody, I'm Kaylem Shepherd. Thank you very much for watching the podcast. Please just take a second to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and make sure it's available on your podcast app. That can be Spotify, it can be Apple. The Memo with me, Kaylem Shepherd, wherever you get your podcast. Once again, thank you for watching.